Thank you, Rabbi Klass. In order to conduct tonight's conversation and discussion, we need experts on the New York City political scene to ask the questions for the evening. And to that end, we have two experts on our panel tonight, and they are Shlomo Greenwald, Associate Editor of the Jewish Press, and Eli Chomsky, Copy Editor of the Jewish Press. They'll be asking tonight's questions. I'm not quite sure what system was used to determine the order of tonight's presenters, but I'm sorry? Alphabetical order. So it has been determined that because of alphabetical order, we will follow that system this evening. We will begin with a 2-minute statement from each candidate, and then we'll move on to the questions for the evening. I take this opportunity to welcome all three of our candidates, John Catsimatidis, Joe Lhota, and George McDonald. Let's welcome them, please. And we ask that Mr. Catsimatidis begin with an opening statement.
Thank you. I am glad to be here in Brooklyn tonight, in Borough Park, and I want to be your next mayor. I believe that New York City is the greatest city in the world, and whatever good has been done to this point, and we had a lot of good years the last 20 years, that I want to build on top of that. I believe we need more housing for our people. We need affordable housing. We need middle-class housing. We need to keep our streets safe. I'm the one that has originally said that I want to keep Ray Kelly. Ray Kelly is a good friend of mine, and I wanted to stay in New York and keep this city safe. And he's done a great job for the last 11 years, and I want to continue that. I believe, and I've said this in public before, that our yeshivas, our Jewish schools, even our Catholic schools, a better job is done in those schools sometimes educating our youth than our public schools. I was at the Catholic Archdiocese. They tell me that they have a 97% graduation rate. And I'm sure in our yeshivas it's just as high. And our problem in our public schools, in a lot of places, we have a 35 to 40% dropout rate. Safe streets, more affordable housing. We need better education for our kids. We want to be able to help the yeshivas and the Catholic schools because they are doing a better education. We have to obey our Constitution, but we got to do the best job we can to help our religious schools. I believe in religion, that our religious people are entitled to their religion, and they have to follow their religion without interference from the outside world. I'm an Orthodox Christian. I'm Orthodox too. So I started as an altar boy at the church at 91st Street and West End Avenue, and I rose to the highest level of the church. I was the highest layperson in the 1990s, that I was in charge of 11 dioceses and 526 churches, reporting to the Patriarch in Constantinople. See, I call it Constantinople because my mother was born there. I don't call it Istanbul. And I was reporting to the Patriarch. I was part of the team that helped put the Patriarch, the Eastern Church, and the Pope together in a meeting in 2004. That was only the third meeting in 800 years. In addition, that I'm on Rabbi Schneider's board in the city for 28 years. So I work putting together our Catholic churches, our Orthodox churches, and our Jewish people to have a better community in the world, and through religion to have a better world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Opening statement, Mr. Lhota.
Thank you. If you can't hear me, raise your hand. I'll be able to use the microphone, but I saw that John was able to do it without, and I will try to do the same. I want to thank the Jewish Press for having this forum, a debate tonight. My name is Joe Lhota. I am running for mayor of the city of New York. Little biographical background. I was born in the Bronx to two young parents. My father became a city cop. He left as a lieutenant after 34 years on the job. His father was a New York City fireman, and my other grandfather, my mom's dad, he was a New York City taxi cab driver. I say this over and over again, New York City's been in my blood from the very, very beginning. But this race is not about the past, it's about our future, and this election has consequences. We need to make sure that we elect a mayor who has a vision to go forward, to continue making sure that we live in a safe city. As mayor, I'm going to focus on jobs and job creation. We need to diversify our economy as much as we can. We need to find ways to lower taxes. We need to make sure that we get the government out of bothering and hindering small businesses from expanding. The number of fees and fines that are going on right now by the City of New York are actually being used to help balance the budget and not control bad behavior, and that is absolutely wrong. As mayor, I'm going to reform public education. I believe our children deserve the best possible education. I'm a large believer in choice and in charter schools, but we need to learn from the charter schools what's good about them and be able to transfer it over to the regular public schools. I believe our parochial schools, our yeshivas, do a phenomenal job, and as mayor, I will do everything to support them. As John mentioned, within the confines of the Constitution, I actually believe that public safety is something that should be paid for by the city, that you should have security officers paid for by the city, because public security is a city issue, not just a local issue. I believe public health is also a public issue, and that you should have school nurses paid for by the city government. It happens in other parts of the country. It has to happen here in New York. And finally, as mayor, I'm going to focus on quality of life issues. Affordability is a huge problem here in the city of New York. We run the risk right now of losing the middle class if we don't find ways to make the city more affordable. Affordable in housing, and affordable in the real estate taxes that we're charging, affordable in the water bills that seem to be going up double-digit year in and year out over the last 11 years. And the most important component of quality of life is continuing to make sure that the NYPD has the proper resources to not keep crime down where it is today, but to see it continue to go down. I want to make sure that the NYPD has the resources necessary to make sure that our quality of life continues to get better and better in this city. The city I want, the city that I've always wanted, is a city where we can live, where we can work, where we can have fun, but most importantly, it's a city that we can raise our family in. That's what I will focus on as mayor, day in and day out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Opening statement, Mr. McDonald.
Some 25 years ago, I went to Grand Central Terminal after a woman died of malnutrition. She starved to death in the richest country, in the richest city in the world. I couldn't understand as a citizen how that could happen. And I didn't know why people were homeless and why they were there, but in those days there were like 1,500 people living in and around Grand Central Terminal. So with a friend of mine and I, we started feeding homeless people every night. And I did that for 700 nights in a row, 10 o'clock at night. They arrested me 4 times, actually. They said it was violation of governmental administration to bring food into starving people. They thought we were attracting people from Ohio for the bologna sandwich at 10 o'clock at night. But in any event, I listened to what the people said, and well, they appreciated the sandwich. What they really wanted was a room and a job to pay for it. A room and a job to pay for it. So I became convinced that they wanted to work. And I didn't know why they were there, but they were indigent. And my common sense, I was an altar boy. You know, I didn't grow up to run the church like John. Believe me, running the city of New York would be enough of, you know, imagine the church politics. But I didn't know why they were there. So I listened to what they said. And we put together an organization to help them go to work. And Ed Koch was mayor then, and I was a homeless advocate, and he said, give him what he wants, he'll fail, and then we won't have to listen to him anymore. So we got a contract to renovate vacant city-owned apartments with homeless families, for homeless families, to use homeless men who lived in the shelter to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, since 1990, we've done $750 million in revenue. We've put $250 million into the pockets of the formerly homeless men and some women that we've employed. We've always paid above the minimum wage. We have an organization that now is over $50 million a year, 500 employees, 1,000 in our care. And I would suggest to you that my experience now is exactly the experience that the City of New York needs to going forward, because we have to employ and provide opportunity and technical skills, vocational education to the folks who are living in these high crime areas. There are 10 of them in our city, and they never change. The only thing that we discuss is the policing, but we don't discuss what it is we're going to do to change the fact that these are high crime areas. The police are not there because they're singling me out or somebody that looks like me or you or anybody else. They're there because there's crime. That's it. It's as simple as that. And we all know that. It's common sense. But what are we going to do about that? That's the question. And I have proven that people will take a hand up if you give it to them. They will go to work. They will devote themselves to it. They won't do drugs. They'll do everything that we want them to do if we provide them the opportunity to do it. And it's a new and different way of looking at it. We can have a completely safe city if we do that. We really can. It's possible to do it. We have a Harvard study that did 7,500 of the graduates of our program, the Doe Fund, Ready, Willing, and Able, the guys in the blue uniforms, versus 7,500 people who come home from prison on parole. And 3 years after they graduate from our program, they're 60% less likely to commit a violent felony. And if that doesn't give you the answer to it, that opportunity and a hand up over a hand out is the answer to the problem. Why is it going to help you other than crime? We spend $1 billion a year today on homelessness. So if you're the middle class, upper middle class, you're wealthy, you look at a guy like me, I'm going to save you money because I'm going to put people to work instead of having them be on the dole. I look forward to explaining more about it, and I have ideas about education. Obviously, we need to start educating the kids when they're 3 and 4 years old at preschool, and we also need to have an outlet for community colleges and vocational training and occupational training at the other end. Everybody isn't going to go to college. We need to be able to plan ahead for that. But full employment where everybody that wants to work can work, and we have to educate our kids, and we have to keep our city safe, and that's what you're looking for in the next mayor. And we need a sustainable budget, one where the employees of the City of New York participate in the cost of their health insurance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all three of our candidates for their opening statements. We will rotate in terms of how the questions are directed. The first question will be directed to Mr. Katsimatidis, and then we will move on, and everyone will have an opportunity in a round-robin fashion to answer a question first. Each candidate will be allotted 2 minutes, and please keep the 2 minutes. Our red and green light man and timing man is not here tonight, so please cooperate with 2-minute answers to each question. Again, the first question for Mr. Katsimatidis by Shlomo Greenwald.
Hello, candidates. Right now, the law is that a parent must sign a consent form to allow the act of Metzisa B'Peh, which is part of the bris ritual in some segments of the Jewish community. Do you agree with this regulation? And in general, do you believe it is appropriate for the Board of Health or any other city agency to regulate religious practices?
It's plain and simple. The Jewish religion has been following their ways for 6,000 years. I believe that in the Jewish religion, you have to, within your own community, do whatever you think is necessary. But religion is religion, and I believe that people should be left alone to do and practice their religion.
Mr. Loda.
I believe the actions of the New York City Department of Health are wrong. I believe the earlier actions by the administration trying to deny the Jewish people their faith and their practices is absolutely wrong. I believe that MVP should be allowed to continue. I don't believe that you need to be given a piece of paper and you must sign it on the dotted line to understand it. I don't have a problem with the city of New York, as you're taking your child home from the hospital, giving you in the package that you receive with all kinds of information what the risks are, but you do not need to sign it. The city government should not be involved at all in trying to regulate religious practice in this country, ever. And combined with the fact I would, as mayor, drop the lawsuit that's currently in place right now to make sure that you can continue the practice, which I call MVP, because I can't pronounce it. Thank you very much.
Mr. McDonald.
And I myself was so glad that Joe said MVP, because that got me right off of the hook for saying it. But I, of course, agree. I went and I was educated on the subject before I formed an opinion. I don't see any reason why the city should interfere with it at all. So we're all in agreement.
The next question is for Mr. Loda, and it's asked by Ellie Chomsky.
Thank you, Nachum. Gentlemen, virtually every Orthodox family sends their children to private yeshivas. The cost of private and parochial education is astronomical. Do you think the city should help defray these costs, and if so, how?
Yes, I do believe the city should defray the cost. The responsibility of the mayor is to make sure that children, all children in the city of New York, get a proper education. I have always been in favor of vouchers, but I'm a realist. We're never going to get vouchers passed by the current way the New York State Senate and the New York State Assembly is constituted. I do believe that there was a bill put forward by the New York State Senate allowing for tax credits, for allowing parents to send their children to private school to have tax credits. I wish the Speaker of the Assembly allowed it to go to the floor of the Assembly, because it would have had a chance of passing. I will continue to use the bully pulpit of the mayor to make sure that we continue to get some way in which Albany helps reduce the cost of private education. As I mentioned earlier in my introductory comments, I do believe the city can help defer some of the costs. Security at yeshivas, at Catholic schools, at any private school shouldn't burden the parents and the tuition costs. Public safety is a city issue. It's one that the mayor should be involved in, and I believe the public safety officers who work for the city of New York should be able to provide security at each and every one of your schools. The same is true in the area of public health. The city of New York, took away from the private schools nurses that would be able to help in any one of the private schools. And it's quite unfortunate. There are numerous different ways within the confines of the United States Constitution where we don't violate the separation of church and state provision to allow to have the city of New York help defer the cost at each and every one of the private schools. Thank you.
See,
Mr. McDonald.
we have to look at them like they're part of our educational landscape in the city. I mean, and so we would look to do whatever we could constitutionally and legally. But I agree with Joe about the tax credit. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't push for a tax credit. You know, I do want to say I went to Catholic school. I have 4 children and 3 grandchildren, and 2 of my 4 children went to New York City public schools, and 2 of my 3 grandchildren are going to New York City public schools. So I have an interest in public schools. Catholic schools, you know, have one leg up, so to speak, on public schools. If you don't do what they say, they throw you out. And then you go to public school. So I'm not surprised that it's 98% or 97%. I mean, it's a different equation. As far as the yeshiva schools are concerned, I'm definitely, and both of them, definitely in favor of tax credits.
Mr. Katsimatidis.
I said it in my opening statement. I will do everything possible to give as much help to the yeshivas and to the Catholic schools as I can within the Constitution. Constitution does not allow of teaching of religion, but I believe we can do almost everything else. I will use my influence as mayor to make sure that we will get the maximum amount of help. After all, when the yeshivas and the Catholic schools are doing such a great job teaching students, why not help them?
Next question is for Mr. McDonald, asked by Shlomo Greenwald.
Economic instability contributes to a variety of social ills, including a rise in crime, a decline in civility, an upswing of intolerance, racism, anti-Semitism, etc. What can each of you say to reassure voters worried about projected fiscal shortfalls in the coming years, and how would basic services be affected in your plan?
Well, as I said earlier, we have an unsustainable budget now. We have imagine spending $100 on salary and then $70 more on fringe. So a city employee costs us 70% more than just their salary. And that's unsustainable. That's for health care and pensions. There's not much that the mayor can do about pensions other than lobby the legislature and the governor, but there's a lot. I wouldn't sign a labor contract without the city employees participating in the cost of health care. Now, that's a lot of money. You're talking about $1 billion or more dollars. I mean, a substantial amount of money. I mentioned before the $1 billion that we spend on homeless services. When I started out 25 years ago or so, we didn't spend any money. But we have this right to shelter in New York City. Everybody know about that? Where tonight, somebody from Jersey City comes here, you and I have to pay for their shelter. Or the Coalition for the Homeless is in court tomorrow, forcing the city, suing the city to provide that shelter. So consequently, 20% of the people in our shelter system are from someplace else, their last known address. Not, like immigrants from someplace else. They're like coming here from someplace else and being indigent and going into our shelter system. And the courts have run it for the past 30 years. So it's just the same thing with the police, because now we have an outside monitor. We have an unelected judge, and we have an appointee of the judge who's going to oversee what the police do. And then the city council passed, I don't know what you want to call, what is it, an inspector general? There are so many people that are going to oversee the police department that are unelected and from the outside that we can't keep straight who they are. So I think the economic issues going forward around crime are what we have to pay attention to. Because if you look at these 10 top stop and frisk areas, you're going to see that they all have the same thing in common. That it's over a 40% dropout rate, that the poverty rate is over 30%. And it goes on and on and on. And there's only one way to change that. And that's with jobs. That's with work. We can put people to work. I'm going to raise $250 million from the time that I'm elected until the time that I'm sworn in of private money, so that on the first day we can go to those communities and start putting people to work. This isn't a government program, it's a private program. But we need to put people to work. Once we do that, once we show folks that this is the way of the future of the city of New York, believe me, we'll have economic justice. We don't need the city council to give us economic justice. We have a system that does that, but we have to include the people in it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Katsimatidis?
I lost track of the question. You haven't covered
Well,
somebody else.
wouldn't be the first time.
Yes, please.
Economic instability contributes to a variety of social ills, including a rise in crime, a decline in civility, an upswing of intolerance, racism, anti-Semitism, etc. What can each of you say to reassure voters worried about projected fiscal shortfalls in the coming years? And in your plan, how would basic services be affected?
Fiscal shortfalls are, I believe New York is the greatest city in the world, like I've said before. And we have 52 million tourists a year, and we have plans, I have plans how to even get that up to 60 million. I believe,
The air conditioning, they put it on.
Okay. I believe that we can get the tourism up to 60 million. I'm an optimist. I think our budget, if we don't do over-regulation, we can bring more businesses into New York, create more jobs easily. I believe that we have to control our payroll and our pension system. There is no way that we can hire a policeman at the age of 20, and he works for 20 years, and he lives to 90, and we pay him for another 50 years. The numbers don't work. We have to fix that. All new employees have to work out a new tier system and a new payroll type system on the pension for sure. But we have to, I believe in our safety in our streets, like I said. We can't give the streets back to the criminals. So between safety in our streets and fixing our payroll systems, I believe that we can control our budget better.
Mr. Loda?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Our budget does have, as Mayor Bloomberg said, a $2 billion gap next year. The mayor is going to inherit a $2 billion gap, and that gap is before any of the collective bargaining agreements are settled. So that gap is going to be even larger. The problem is that the budget, as mentioned earlier, is unsustainable. It has doubled in size. The budget that was given to Mike Bloomberg was $36 billion. It's now $70 billion. It has gone up 56% over the rate of inflation over the last 11 3/4 years. The fact that it's gone up that fast, like nothing else has gone up that fast, is absolutely amazing because we are required by law to have a balanced budget. And our taxes, our revenues, money that comes from the private sector has also grown 56% over the rate of inflation. I was a budget director of New York City for 4 years, actually, in 4 separate budgets. And during that period of time, and the budget was half what it is now, I was able to close $4 and $5 billion budget gaps without impacting services. We need to be rigorous with the New York City budget. We need to be rigorous in making sure that the government of the City of New York is efficient and effective. And I believe it's not right now. It is bloated. It needs to basically go on a fiscal discipline diet to understand what we can do. So I will find the ways to close the budget gap. I will do it without reducing services or without reducing any benefits that we're receiving now. I do agree that we need to deal with our health care costs. We need to deal with our pension costs. We need to find ways to restructure the systemic problem that we have now in the budget. But more importantly, we need to restructure the government to work for the people of the City of New York. It is no longer being, it hasn't been restructured in the last 11 years. We don't have a new agency. We don't have any new merged agencies. And there's no one in the government right now asking the question, can we do what we do for a nickel less? And that's what we need in the City of New York. That's how we'll be able to close the budget. I've done it before. I'll do it again.
Thank you very much. Our next question is for Mr. Katsimatidis, asked by Ellie Chomsky.
And now we will officially go on to the stop and frisk issue. As mayor, how would you deal with the recent ruling by Judge Shira Scheindlin concerning her stop and frisk judicial ruling?
Several ways. First of all, the lawsuit that Mayor Bloomberg is bringing, I will continue to try to see if we can overturn the law. Second way, if there's a way to limit the budget of the Inspector General, I will try to limit it. Third way, the new technology that's coming out. If we could get that new technology where it's almost like a camera system and you could be 10 feet away and you can tell if somebody's carrying a gun, you might not need stop and frisk. We might be able to use 21st century technology to overcome the law. So there are several ways, but one has to be innovative. One has to use new technology, and you got to be smarter than the average criminal. Thank you.
Mr. Loda.
Yes. I believe Judge Scheindlin's ruling will be overturned upon appeal. I encourage the mayor, as we all encourage the mayor, immediately upon that ruling to appeal it. But I also went one step further. I asked the mayor to actually put a court order, ask for a court order to put the motion in and stay. The monitor has been appointed. The monitor is out getting information directly from the police department. To me, that violates what the intent of what the appeal was supposed to do. And I encourage the mayor, and I will continue to encourage the mayor and his corporation counsel to get back into court and get a stay and prevent the monitor from doing what he's doing right now. That said, stop, question, and frisk is a most important tool. It was a tool that's been used by the police department. To the best of my knowledge, when my dad became a cop in 1963, 1964, stop, question, and frisk was used back then as well. It was codified by the Supreme Court of the United States. In 1968, Supreme Court Chief Justice Earl Warren, not the most conservative justice, wrote the rules that allow for stop, question, and frisk. In fact, those are his words, stop, question, and frisk. And it's written in plain English. One of the things that I will do as mayor is I will make sure that the public understands what police officers are allowed to do within the confines of the United States Constitution and as interpreted by the Supreme Court of the United States. Because of what I said earlier, I believe once the appellate division looks at the Supreme Court ruling of Terry v. Ohio, this ruling from Judge Shenlin will be overturned. But I think it's really important that we continue to talk to the public about how great it is that we have stop, question, and frisk. It's at the core of the reduction in crime. And it's more than just taking guns off the street. When a police officer sees somebody suspicious on the street, opening up or trying to attempt to open up car doors, he has every right in the world to stop them, even though they haven't done anything illegal, because they look like they're doing something suspicious. He should question them, and then based on that questioning, he has the right, based on the answers that are given, to actually search that person overall. Look, I will do everything I can to get the police department the resources. We cannot allow what Judge Shenlin has placed upon the city of New York to stay. It is wrong, and I will do everything in my power as mayor to make sure that it's overturned.
Mr. McDonald.
I mean, look at what they've done. Look at what they've done in an election year. They've pandered. I mean, for example, the pandering, here's de Blasio, right, talking about raising taxes on the rich, okay? When he knows he can't do that. That's the governor and the legislature that are going to do that. I'm just using that as an example of what stop and frisk is, too. It's pandering. So in an election year, they come along, and this is all bad, and it's wrong for the people. And you know what? There's a handful of people. You go into these communities, and the people are happy that they're safe and alive. That's the first most important thing. And the other thing, of course, is that we have police officers like Joe's father and my uncle, and they go out every day, and they do one thing for you and me. They risk their lives every day. Now, thank God they don't lose a life every day, but they risk their lives on our behalf every day. And what are we telling them? They've made us the safest big city in America, and they've done a horrible job. And we need all kinds of courts and monitors. We don't need that. Stop and frisk, stop, question, and frisk have come down already because crime has come down. So there's 20% less already. They won't tell you that, will they? Oh, no. They're not going to say that. I already know who I'm going to appoint as police commissioner. This person has experience in doing community policing, and that's the next step that we have to do. We have to get the trust of the community. It refers back to what I said before. We need to give them an alternative. We need to get work so that they can work and get paid and do like the rest of us do every day. We can do that. And I don't think that there's any question about it. I think that from in the legal circles that I've talked to, the people say that this judge has many rulings like this that have been overturned before, and that this will be overturned. And I, as mayor, would continue the fight to do that. I think an unobstructed police force. Listen, you want somebody to be the monitor of the police department? You elect the mayor. We don't have to judge. We don't need outside monitors. We know how to keep ourselves safe. We've done it, haven't we? Look at what we've done as a city, and we can continue to do that, and I will as mayor.
Thank you very much. Our next question for Mr. Loda, asked by Shlomo Greenwald.
Thank you. The next question comes from Jewish Press reader, community activist, and candidate for Republican District Leader, Nachman Kohler. So forgive me as I read it. It's a bit of a local question. Although the Bloomberg administration has built more than 130,000 units of affordable housing, only 252 units have been built in Borough Park's Community District, according to Real Affordability, an evaluation published by Association for Neighborhood Development. This problem must and can be solved. Most of the funds are allocated to areas where the land costs may be cheaper. However, this is grossly unfair. Each community is entitled to a fair share of housing funds. These funds should be used to build affordable housing in the communities that need it. Borough Park is in dire need of affordable housing. Your reaction?
Yes.
You're right. Affordable housing is a serious issue in the city of New York, and quite honestly, we're at a tipping point right now that if we don't do something about affordable housing, we risk losing the middle class in the city, and we cannot afford to have that happen. We no longer have the partners in Washington. They're cutting housing subsidies left and right. We no longer have partners in Albany who created programs like Mitchell-Lama that allowed for affordable housing to be built. So we're going to have to do it ourselves. And I agree with Nachman, the questioner, who was asking why are we getting shortchanged here in Borough Park and in other parts of the city of New York. We need to make it more equitable. I believe we need to use our current taxing structure. We need to provide incentives to both for-profit companies to make sure that we reduce the property taxes, as well as the property taxes that would be given to any developer. That incentive requires that they can build, depending on how much of a subsidy that they want or reduction in the taxes, whether it's 20% or 30% of affordable housing in every housing unit that they build. That being said, if you want to build 100% of affordable housing, the amount of tax reduction would be even greater. We have to do it on our own to do that because we need to make sure that we have housing for all of the people currently in the city of New York, because right now there are projections that we're going to have 3/4 to a million more people by 2030, 2035. And I believe we can do that. Now, what's going on under the current housing program of Mike Bloomberg, whether they seem to be redlining Borough Park, that needs to change. There needs to be a fair and equitable distribution of housing dollars in all 5 boroughs and in all communities within all 5 boroughs. It shouldn't be done on a first-come, first-served basis. That should be allocated based on a formula of equity, not based on a formula of first-come, first-served.
Mr. McDonald.
Right, thank you. I've endorsed the Housing First plan, which is to preserve and build 150,000 units of affordable housing, specifically to using tax incentives and zoning bonuses. I'm in favor of it. So that's one way to mitigate the cost of the land when you actually need more affordable housing. So I would be in favor of that. I'm also in favor of using zoning and tax incentives to build 75,000 market, not built by the city, but 75,000 efficiency apartments, because we don't have housing at the bottom. And I know with large families we need affordable housing, but for economic reasons in our city, we've lost hundreds of thousands of SRO units, for lack of a better term, in the last century. And those are for working poor people climbing the economic ladder, and we have to replace that. I built one on East 117th Street, 74 units, the Doe Fund did. And they're 275 square feet, have a kitchen, a bathroom, and a closet, and cost $500 a month. So they're affordable and livable. Thank you.
Mr. Katsimatidis.
I've been in the real estate business for 40 years. We're building 1 million square feet on Myrtle Park and Flatbush. We're building 500,000 square feet with my brother David over there and Coney Island. Incentives. Developers have to be given the right incentives to incentivize them to build. I believe they should be building housing, affordable housing, middle-income housing, and market housing. You can build a combination of the 3 and provide quality housing in every community. No community should be excluded. But if you provide the incentives, then people will take the money out of their pocket, invest it, and do it. And by incentives is, look, we own the sky. What's the difference if you have zoning for 10 stories and you allow them to do 14 or 16? What we want to do is create the housing and get it done. And I believe incentivizing it and providing low-cost funds is the way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question is for Mr. McDonald, asked by Ellie Chomsky.
In this campaign, much has been made of the trust and character issue. We're not singling out anyone. Please make a case for your trustworthiness based on both your public and personal experiences.
Well, you know, I've led, for a non-politician, a pretty public life. When I went to Grand Central Terminal and started the Doe Fund all those years ago, I've been doing it out in the public since then. And, you know, what I did could be called a mitzvah, except that I do it every day. And I've been doing it for the past 27 years. And you'll be interested to know, as I mentioned before, I was educated as a young man as a Catholic and went to Catholic school. But when I started the Doe Fund, it was to help, and now see if this sounds familiar to you, it was to help anonymous people help themselves. So it really was the Rabbi's ladder, Maimonides' ladder, where the highest is to help somebody anonymously help themselves. And that just came to me over the years. I was honored by Central Synagogue, and you'll have to say in Hebrew what it is, but repairer of the breach. And I don't think that they would have honored me unless they thought that I had good character. So I will use the Central Synagogue as a reference for you. I've devoted my life not to my own personal gain, but to help all of the people in the city of New York. And I believe that I have done that, actually, by helping people who otherwise couldn't be helped. They were laying on the floor of Grand Central, and they come home from prison, and they're homeless, and they don't have jobs. And it helps keep you safe, because they're not committing crimes, and they're helping to keep the city clean. So I would rest my case and my character on my work, and thank you.
Mr. Katsimatidis.
We've had Mike Bloomberg for 12 years. He doesn't need the money. He did it because he wanted to do a good job. I have not taken any money for contributions. Our problem with our professional politicians, and let's take the Democrats, if they get a big union pat on the back, there's an IOU there. And you know who's going to pay the IOU? The taxpayers in this room. If a professional politician, somebody raises $100,000 for them, and they're going to run for an election again, and they know if that politician knows he doesn't deliver what that favor is, that IOU, that person raised $100,000 for them, then he's not going to get it the next time he runs. Mike Bloomberg didn't need a job going in. He didn't need a job going out. I don't need a job. I just want to do the right thing for our community, for our taxpayers. I've had a union shop in my stores in New York for 44 years. One of the union presidents said publicly in Bloomberg television, I think, John is tough, but he's fair. I want to serve the taxpayers. I want to serve the workers. I want to serve all of New Yorkers. And I just want to do a great job. Thank you.
Mr. Loda.
Thank you for the question. I believe the question was about my ethical character, my moral character. I've been in and out of public service. I've actually been in the private sector a lot longer than I've been in public service, and I've been examined and re-examined, and everything I do has been an open record. I think what we've experienced in this campaign has been extraordinary on the other party, both candidate for mayor and a candidate for city controller. It's really unfortunate. And what's unfortunate, it's taken up so much airtime, so much ink in the newspapers, we're not talking about the issues. Quite honestly, while John believes that not taking contributions is important, that all that means is that theoretically only rich people can be elected to office. I don't believe for one second, as I raise contributions, that I owe anyone anything. And quite honestly, I'll go back to, a phrase and a quote that was from Lyndon Johnson, who said to all the members of the Senate when he was majority leader, if you cannot take contributions and tell them no, you don't belong in this business. I have a moral streak and a moral background conceived on principles of doing what is the right thing. And if, I'm running for mayor because that's what I want to do the right thing, not to listen to campaign contributors. The reason why we have campaign finance is the minimum amount that can be given per person, and no corporate checks any longer. $4,950 is the most anyone can give. I think it's crazy to think that someone's moral integrity can be questioned by being given $49,050.
Thank you very much. Our final question from our panel is for Mr. Katsimatidis, asked by Shlomo Greenwald.
Final question. As Nachum said, this one has been in the news recently. What is your opinion of Councilman Lander's proposed bill that supermarkets be required to charge 10 cents per plastic shopping bag?
Why are supermarkets required to charge 10 cents for plastic bags?
Right, more accurately, what do you think of that?
I think it's lunacy. We are working very, very hard to recycle the plastic bags. And I would say a great deal of our bags are being recycled. The problem with the city council, and sometimes I call it the silly council, because some of the laws they passed, like the one they passed last week, where you can't describe the victim. You can't say, if somebody just robbed a bank across the street, you can't say male or female. I'm not allowed to tell you. White, black, Asian, Hispanic. Oh, I can't tell you. 20 years old or 80 years old. I can't tell you. One leg or two. I can't tell you. It's just silly. Every week they figure out new bills to pass. I think they read the San Francisco newspapers.
That's it. You got it.
And trying to find out what is San Francisco doing so we could follow that path. There is a problem with plastic bags. We immediately decided that we will voluntarily recycle, and we recycle in every store. To charge the consumer another 10 cents, it's just wrong. That's all the professional politicians do. Charge, charge, charge. If there's a budget, if somebody's walking around saying there's going to be a budget gap of $2 billion, they don't sit around trying to say, how do we fix it? They say, okay, what do we raise? We'll raise the permit fees, we'll raise this, we'll raise that. It's out of control. You need somebody with common sense to be in there to keep their eyes on a silly council and try to work for common sense, and that's me. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Loda.
Yes, the proposal that has been put forward by some members of City Council, and I agree with John, it probably came from San Francisco or at worst Oakland. But I actually believe what they're trying to do is absolutely wrong. This is not what they should be doing. And they charge 10 cents. Their proposal is to charge 10 cents for plastic bags. And they don't want to call it a tax because they'd have to go to Albany to get it done. They're saying that 10 cents would go back to the owner of the supermarket. And here you've got an owner of the largest supermarket chain in New York who says he doesn't want it. We shouldn't do it. And quite honestly, people should be educated about what's right and what's wrong about the plastic bags. People shouldn't be told what to do, but they should be educated about it. And when you go to the supermarket, they always ask you the same question: plastic or paper? Take the paper. Don't take the plastic. Reuse it. Bring them back. Recycling is an important thing to do. The city council does come up with some of the silliest ideas you can possibly imagine. And here's one that, just let's take more money away from people who can least afford to get rid of more money. You may argue that 10 cents is not a lot of money, but let me tell you something. For somebody who's making minimum wage, 10 cents is an awful lot. We shouldn't allow this to happen. I will do everything I can to support those members of council who want to not pass this bill.
Mr. McDonald.
So another thing that the city council does, for example, that's anti-small business, is they passed a law where if somebody is unemployed and somebody else is employed, and the two of them come to you for a job, and you interview them. Now, I know nobody in the city council has ever actually met a payroll, built a business, or had to earn a living, so you wouldn't expect that they'd understand what hiring somebody and then being responsible for having them on your payroll and replacing them when they leave and all of that good stuff. But here's what they did. They established a pathway for the employer to be sued if they don't hire the unemployed person. They're saying that you're discriminating against the unemployed person. And that's this fellow, Brad Lander, who comes up with great ideas all the time by reading the San Francisco Chronicle. So, these ideas, I'll tell you one that's a serious idea, though, and that we ought to reconsider, and that's the state bottle law. Anybody ever go out at night and see what happens to the garbage in our city at night? The hordes of people that go through it, opening them, taking out the bottles, closing them up. The next fellow or the next woman comes and opens them, takes out, looks for the bottle. All the bottles are gone. Then the next one. And you'll have 4, 5, 6, 7 armies of the night going through our garbage. And you know what that causes? Rats. Because they open up the garbage. And now the rats are there eating. It's really a horrible thing to witness, and it's a horrible thing for a city like ours to see these poor people going through the garbage all night for a nickel bottle when it's just plastic, and it ought to be recycled with the rest of the plastic, and we shouldn't separate it in the waste stream. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we wrap up with our 2-minute closing statements from our candidates, I take this opportunity to thank Jerry Greenwald, publisher of the Jewish Press, and of course, Shlomo Greenwald and Ellie Chomsky for serving on the panel. And yes, of course, we thank the Borough Park Y for their hospitality this evening. In fairness, we will do the closing statements in reverse order from the opening statements, and we call upon Mr. McDonald.
Well, thank you very much. I think that you have a sense of what I want to do, which is I want to use the purchasing power of the city of New York to create jobs. I think that an example of that would be a food processing factory in the Bronx. You know, the unemployment rate in the Bronx is really, when you get down to disconnected youth between the ages of 16 and 24, you have hundreds of thousands that don't go to school and are unemployed between 16 and 24. So imagine if we used the power that we have to buy things. The city of New York is the second largest purveyor of food in the nation after the armed services. Imagine that. So we should use that buying power. I like to use the example in a food processing plant in the Bronx for applesauce. Why should we buy applesauce from China for the Department of Education? Does that make any sense? Even if we paid a little more, we created the jobs in the Bronx. The money goes out for rent, for clothes, for food, into the community. Our community, not the Chinese community. Ours. We're not going to have a hard time finding the apples in New York State, are we? So those are the kinds of things, ladies and gentlemen, that I believe that the next mayor of the city of New York has to do, is look for ways to use the enormous purchasing power of the city of New York to create jobs here in the city and to start getting people to move up the economic ladder rather than to move to prison. And I'll leave you with one number of why you should vote for me. Why what I'm saying tonight makes more sense to you than anybody else in this election, Republican, Democrat, or Independent. You know how much it costs to keep one person in Rikers Island for a year? $168,000, according to a recent article in the New York Times. Can you imagine that? $168,000. You know we can do better than that. I've proven we can do better than that, and we will do better than that when you elect me, George McDonald, your next mayor. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Closing statement, Mr. Loda.
Thank you. I want to thank the Jewish press, and I want to thank the folks from the Borough Park community who have come out to listen to us tonight. As I mentioned earlier in my introduction, elections have consequences. And this year, the election is even more important. Everything great that's happened over the last 20 years in the city of New York, which started with the reduction in crime, is very, very fragile. The city is fragile. There are people who believe that they can do whatever they want in the city of New York, and our budget would get under control, our infrastructure will be able to stay in place, that we can tax more. We can't. This election has consequences. We need to vote for a person as you go into the voting booth and think about who is the right person to fix our fiscal problems in the city of New York. Who is the right person to educate our children? Who is the right person to pick the right police commissioner, keep Ray Kelly, or pick the Ray doesn't want to stay, the right police commissioner to make sure that we all stay safe in the city of New York? Who's going to always remember to pick up the garbage? Who's going to always remember when it snows? Or never forget Brooklyn when it snows. It's happened before. We should never happen again. This election has consequences. I believe I'm the person that you should vote for because I will focus all of my energies on making sure that none of those things actually happen. I believe I have the vision, I know I have the principles, and I also know I have the experience to get the job done. My name is Joe Loda. I'm looking forward to your support. The primary is September 10th. I hope I have your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Closing statement, Mr. Katsimatidis.
I went to a birthday party of a friend of mine about 6 weeks ago, and there was the 30 big businessmen there and hedge fund guys, all of them investing billions of dollars in companies. And they were Democratic liberals, most of them. And I turned, and my friend says, why don't you address them for 2 minutes? And I got up and I said, guys, of the 5 or 6 Democratic candidates, you guys own a lot of companies. Of the 5 or 6 Democratic candidates running, who would you hire to run one of your companies? Well, they laughed for about 2 minutes. We have a problem. There's certainly, if we nominate or re-elect one of our Democratic people, we're in trouble. We're going to go downhill. Forbid whatever police commissioner they pick. We're not going to have safe streets. Our taxes are going to go up, up, and up. I believe I have the best ability to get elected. I like Joe, and he knows it.
You don't show it.
I do like you. But I believe... Don't get your feelings hurt.
Here I am.
Don't be so sensitive.
I'm not sensitive.
I'm not either.
I'm the least sensitive guy up here.
Okay. I believe
Of any man I've ever met in my life.
I believe that I have the ability to win in November. So what is it all about? It's all about winning. Having enough money and enough know-it-all to win. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you to all of our candidates.